So we're beginning to work with chakras and exercises, and we'll continue. But it's nice to get maybe a broader spiritual insight, to try and describe a little bit what's happening, also from a non-dual perspective. So what we're doing in any exercise that we do is they are all exercises in consciousness, in conscious awareness. And the primary dogma of the non-dual movement, non-dual means not two, it's about the wisdom of unity, but often it's a little bit dogmatized according to Advaita Vedanta from India. We don't really come from that direction. We come more from the wisdom of unity, and the wisdom of interdependence of all things, that each thing is connected to everything else, that we're not inherently separate. But what you'll hear a lot of when you move through the non-duality web is the primacy of consciousness. That consciousness is primary, it's fundamental to, some would argue, to all things, to all experience, to all life. Perhaps even inseparable from life, but that becomes playing with words a little bit. So consciousness is that which underlies and represents our ability to experience anything at all. So any thought that we have can only happen within a field of our consciousness. If we're not conscious, there is no thought. And I'm not saying this is what we believe, I'm saying this is the non-dual approach often. And thinking itself, the voice inside the head, the busy mind, and all mental processes is happening against a backdrop of consciousness. So in this way, a good metaphor to show this would be to say that consciousness is like silence. So when you listen to a piece of music at the end of a meditation, you can hear the silence which is there before the music begins. It's that which allows the music to happen, and it's there when the music is over. It's primary. But it's so primary that the music itself, the notes, the rhythm, depends on the silence. If you were just to listen to the silent gaps, you would hear the music more. The variations in tone, in frequency, is depending on the silence. The possibility of having a digga of this chakra and a dug of this chakra is depending on the silence. The silence is the primary facilitator of all sound, all music, and it's the same way with thought. Thought is also a vibration before it becomes a voice inside our heads speaking English or Yiddish or whatever. Before that, it's a vibration, it's an impulse. And sometimes it's possible to slow down or to expand the space inside the mind and to slow down the thinking process so that you can actually feel the thought emerging before it takes a form. So you can actually, by listening to the silent bedding of the mind, so by awakening the listener and listening to the silent backdrop, the silent sky of the mind, it can be possible to already sense the thought before it actually says, I am cold, or I am here, or whatever the thought wants to say. Nobody loves me. The voice inside my head likes to say that. So it's like a garden in a way, the mind. And this silence is actually, has the potential to become very conscious. More conscious. When we begin listening to silence, we notice that there are different kinds of silence to be heard. Like, for example, an angry silence sounds different. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's got a slightly different vibration, an angry silence, from a loving silence. The silence inside a church has a different vibration to the silence inside IBM headquarters on a day off. If you listen to the silence of a tree, it's got a different vibration from the silence of another human being, like a sleeping child. So there's, in a way, silence, we're conditioned to think silence is like absence of sound, but actually it's the beginning of a whole journey of living amazement. And it's the same when we begin to tune into a quality like the quality of silence. It doesn't really matter if it's the silence of the grass growing over there or the silence of my heart chakra. It's inside out and outside in, it's all the same. Because silence is somehow not caught in space. So you can listen to the silence of a friend who is far away. And it can be like that, just that listening to their silence of somebody who's not here right now can bring them right here with an intimacy which is lovely. Almost more lovely because there's no bodies involved. You can get to know people a little bit better like that sometimes. So it's a therapeutic technique as well. When somebody's talking to you, to listen to the silence behind their words. And then the quality of their voice begins to give a whole load of new kinds of information which wouldn't be there if we were trying to get the meaning of what they're saying, which can lead to a kind of confusion. Because often people tell stories which are in denial of something else, which is what they're really feeling and would really rather speak about, but they're not able to yet. But just that listening brings awareness to that which can't yet be expressed. And in that, it's a tremendous support to the person, even though they might not know it's happening. So, silence by itself is just a word. What we're talking about is the listener. And when we're talking about the listener, we're talking about the receptivity of consciousness. The one that listens, the one within us that's able to listen to sound, is conscious. It is the conscious one. And it's not pushing, it's not broadcasting, it's receiving information. And there's something, with all of this information out there, there's something about this reception of information into consciousness, into this consciousness, which is incredibly healing and harmonizing. It has an effect. It's as if the information is lost, looking for where it belongs, how to come home, and when it's just heard, it's just received, something gets a sense of rightness. It's like plugged in. It belongs. It's found. It is allowed to be here. It's allowed to live. So there is an active component to consciousness, to listening, so that we would find where we begin to learn how to filter through different. So if we have an attitude that we want to really be of service to our environment, So that attitude of wanting to be of service will attune where we listen to. It can direct, but it's filtering. So to listen to the birds outside, we immediately attune, we're filtering. This is active. But then when we listen to our own heartbeat, we're filtering again. This is active. But the primary movement is receptive. It's like tuning a radio. So this is why when working with exercises we ask, invite, suggest an attitude of softness and curiosity. Because curiosity is asking a question really. So you come to your heart chakra and it's like, how are you today? What's the weather? It's asking. It's opening up to receive an answer. And the softness is, again, this softness like water, it can penetrate and it can receive information in. If we come with our consciousness like with a push towards a chakra, the chakra's probably going to resist. You know, if somebody puts their hand on your forehead and they're channeling a kind of conscious will, be healed, it can have an effect, but it will also have a whiplash. So you can be healed for a moment, but it can have an effect after that, of like the chakra closing shut again. Whereas when there's an invitation to release what's not needed anymore, this receptive invitation, or an invitation to share what's going on, there's a much, much deeper healing movement happening. So, in terms of duality and non-duality, one of the healing movements that's happening is really a kind of reunion of consciousness with itself. So let's say we're sitting and we're going to do an exercise now and we go to our heart chakra. So normally we're sitting somewhere around the head. Sometimes, you know, when my mother-in-law used to come and visit, I noticed I would sit out here to the right of my head. You know, I'm immediately displaced. But when I'm relaxed, I tend to be sitting in the center of my head. But it's possible to sit other places, and maybe other people are sitting other places. But somewhere we have a center position. And when we're doing an exercise, we tend to kind of start in the center of our heads because the mind is at first leading the way. So the mind says, okay, I'm now going to go to my heart chakra. Yes. This is what we've been told to do. So we're going to go to the heart chakra. So consciousness moves, often like this, out, and comes to the heart chakra. Yes? It's like a snake almost, like, whoo, here comes your consciousness, your conscious attention to the heart chakra. What's going on here? Not a lot. Meanwhile, the heart chakra is also conscious or aware. It's here waiting for this one to come and meet it. Right? And it's like, no, what's happening? Where are you? And so in this coming into a particular part of the body or the energetic body, at a certain stage there is a touching of this consciousness with the consciousness which was here. And that's where the magic is. There's an effect there, a healing effect. It's like a reunion of consciousness with consciousness. And often, most of what's going on down here below the neck is completely neglected. A lot of us were born and we got this far into the body. And the rest is kind of the enemy, not to be trusted too much. Does its own thing, gets sick, dies. Has forbidden emotions, can get us rejected. And so there's this incredibly beautiful movement that begins to happen when we do these exercises where our conscious mind comes together and reunites with, let's say, with our hand. And the hand knows that it belongs. And the hand is allowed back into the universe of the wholeness of the whole physical manifestation. And then it can be a little bit shocking because it can turn out that the hand actually knows better about a lot of stuff than we do from our head. It's got a life of its own. It's just been separated. It's been denied. It's been forgotten. Sometimes almost forsaken by the programming of mind. And a big part of this programming is about dictating reality onto ourselves. This is the reality, this is the truth, this is what we should feel, we shouldn't express this, we should be like this. I'm traumatized, I've got problems, my family is... the reality is that the world is bad. And I don't mean just the beliefs, I mean in a felt sense way. It's not really a good place to be here, it's not really safe, it's not really okay to be natural and to open up. This kind of layers and layers of distrust, which leads us to deny ourselves, to deny our naturalness, to deny living experience, to deny our emotions, our feelings. And in this we lose connection with what we like, what we don't like, what feels good, with our own sense of well-being. And of course we begin to feel very much like we don't belong anymore. We don't want to be here. And you can find ourselves saying, I want to go home, I want to go home. Then you realize you are home. So what home is it that we're longing for? That the whole of us from somewhere deep inside is remembering, I want to go home. This kind of spiritual homesickness in a way. So, in all the teaching that we do, including this whole education, but also non-dual therapy, and which is integrated quite a lot into this education now, and also the other courses, the simplest emphasis is always, number one, on wholeness, and the second is on really honouring and respecting and accepting whatever is being felt at any moment. Feeling our feelings, but it's not feeling our feelings in the sense of where it's often taken to of like in order to get a grip of them. It's more like, putting out our hand and letting a butterfly land and letting it fly on. It's not capturing them. It's not in order to be able to dictate anything to them, because that's already not receptive. That moves again into the denial. So this worldview is based very much on the insight that the body, the physical body, the subtle bodies, they have the intelligence to heal themselves. Our traumas have the intelligence to heal themselves. So much intelligence inside a trauma. Mm-hmm. So much awakening often inside a trauma. Let me give a simple example. You're 8 years old and then your mother comes home and says, your father just died. This is a trauma. You come back from school, everything's fine and wonderful, you're going to watch TV, you've got your sandwiches and a drink, and then suddenly it's like your father's dead. How do you make sense of that? A trauma is when you cannot locate it within your normal, habitual life. In that moment, there is a shock in which all your beliefs are blown apart, where there is a total awakeness. Suddenly, the whole world looks strange. Suddenly, it becomes absolutely clear the fact of mortality, that we can just die. And who knows what's happening next? So suddenly we're standing in the unknown. And it's got such a strong sense of truth about it. Because this is the one thing maybe that happened to the child which is undeniable. Daddy's dead, he's not coming back. It's got such a strong sense of truth. Whereas, the games in the schoolyard, or marks at school, or mummy getting angry because the room's not tidy, this doesn't have the same sense of truth. But that we can die, which is born in trauma, that's got a sense of reality. The whole perfume of truth is surrounding it. So if we try and medicate away our traumas, we're trying to medicate away an aspect of reality. So this is always going to turn into a kind of contortion. later on in life, how this plays out is that person, when things go wrong in the world, maybe they get sacked from their job and everything, they'll default back to that trauma. They will refer to that trauma. This is truthful. There is death. You're not going to mess with me. Not with your careers and with your, to the boss, or because there is this sense of truth which becomes almost like a sword. And I'm not saying trauma is good, but it has something in it which is instructive from a much, much deeper layer than even the harmony of the psychology, if we can allow it. If we can really allow ourselves to be in that trauma vortex and to feel everything that's there, then we get to also evolve through the lessons, awaken through the lessons. So that sense of truth no longer has to come with a sense of horror, of loss and grief and shock. It can become that very thing which liberates us from the fear of death in general. So, as we work with different exercises, there will come forward again and again this philosophy of acceptance, accepting whatever we're feeling, accepting whatever comes forward. This, and you'll hear it a lot if you look into the New Age web, that you have to allow radical acceptance. Jeff Foster talks a lot about radical acceptance. But we are deeply conditioned not to want to suffer. So often what we get to then is a stage where I'm going to allow my feelings in order to get rid of it. I tried it, I allowed my feelings, I've been allowing this feeling of rage for 3 weeks and it's still there. So you failed. Because it's still there, it's not gone away yet. So it doesn't quite get us, as long as there is this agenda to negate, to reject a feeling, which is so often born of rejection, the suffering in the first place, then it will, in a way, perpetuate itself. There is a place beyond the agenda to heal, the mental agenda to heal. And this is where, and we say it at this early stage because it's very, very important, because in a way it's the trap of every healer. From out of compassion, we really, really want things to go well. We really wish things well. We really want to alleviate suffering. We want the sick to get better. We want people not to be caught in the states of affliction. We so much wish for this. But when this turns into an agenda to get rid of suffering, it can very quickly become an overlay of denial and rejection and negation, which is what caused us to fragment in the first place. So when we talk about an attitude of acceptance, it's almost as if what's needed is to be such a radical acceptance of whatever we are and whatever's going on in our experience, that it can go on forever if that's what's needed on behalf of the whole. We can carry it. We can carry it to be of service to our ancestors and to our environment and to others. We just are ready to carry these millstones with us. And then there's a magic. And the magic is that when there is this readiness, this humility, where we don't have to be that perfect one. We don't have to strive anymore. We don't have to improve. Then that which is able to allow anything at all gets strengthened. The allower, which is very close to the listener. So the experience is still there, but suddenly we became this big. And the experience, it's like, oh yeah, well, it's my personality, I recognize that, it's a bit of a bum, my personality. It's no longer like my personality, my horrific cage, it's not so bad anymore. It's just like a very badly designed dress which I have to wear for a lifetime. Which at the very least can show other people how to design good dresses, you know what I mean? It can make them feel better about themselves. There is a vast space beyond the personality, and it's full of richness. It's primary, and this is where we move into the qualities of consciousness. So consciousness itself is not a boring blank field. Consciousness has effects, subtle effects of bliss, blissfulness of being, like the birds are singing so blissfully right now in naturalness, because they're not interfering with it mentally. There is a powerful, choiceless love that moves by itself out of consciousness, wherever consciousness goes. Sometimes consciousness will, because it's not a separate consciousness, our intimate individual consciousness isn't separate from the consciousness of the whole universe. So sometimes what will be drawn out of our consciousness will be a sense of peace. Or we can find that because we created the space through allowance of whatever we need to be in any moment, that peace just seems to come down as if from another dimension. Because whatever we think is the scope of this unified consciousness, we can be sure it's greater, more infinite than the mind can contain. So sometimes, even though there's one consciousness, we can have the experience of something even greater blessing us, which is often called grace. And that's the true healing. When we're working with somebody, it's not that we can make it happen. We can just open up the doors and be able and ready to be a servant, to facilitate. But when that blanket of peace comes down, it's often the healing moment where a whole cycle has been completed. And where that movement, a choiceless movement of love arises, is often the beginning of reunion. So you can begin to see what a journey there is there, just in this boundless resource of our own consciousness. It's like the silence, it's not an end point. It's not like, I'm conscious, power of the now, and that's it. This is boring, isn't it? What's happening next? It's much more than that. It's a constant, perpetual invitation. Now the nature of it in practice is, we can have these awakening moments where you realize that you are this consciousness beyond the thinking mind, beyond the personality, beyond your name, beyond the shape of you, beyond your feelings. But then suddenly you go on a field trip and you're back inside the personality again, and you're really angry about somebody which is really not that important, who's really annoying to you, and you're totally in there in the 3D thing. That's absolutely fine. It happens because it's needed. It's happened because we need to awaken within that. Or after that, which is also in that. So sometimes, I can go about my daily life, and for about 5 hours in the afternoon, I'm just gone. In the taxes or in the bank account, or rage at something at work. It's I can just be gone, and then suddenly I'm back. It's like, I took a field trip. So, it's really like you kind of go into these field trips into the psyche. And then it's possible to, what's really, really important then is to strengthen the other side, to welcome yourself back. To be curious about where you've been, to listen to what's been understood, what's been seen, what's been felt. To get a sense of what was the grasping mechanism, what was it that was so touched or so unsafe that it had to try and get a hold or get rid of. Why is this person so incredibly irritating to me? These kind of questions. Why does it make me so white rage angry? This is like gold, because it's always something inside our own psyche. Always, right? When we went through, both of us, very difficult divorces, and at a certain stage, just after the child allowance for me had been decided by my ex-husband and everything, I was sitting there on the balcony. We just moved to an expensive house because we had to keep the children in a custody fight. And I'm sitting there, and suddenly I'm in a total rage at Bart's ex-wife. And I'm thinking, she is such a helpless dependent. She's just like taking all of the allowance, all of the money, and she doesn't get a job for herself, and she should really get it. And it had that whole energy of the obsessive one, And then there was this little window, this moment of like, whoop, what is it, if you were her, what is it in you that you're not doing right now? What am I not doing? Like, why is this so utterly annoying to me? And I kind of sat there for a moment, and it was like something of the clouds of the psyche opened, and I realized that it would be possible for me to open accounts on Facebook for the university where I was working, and I could make a shitload of money, and it wouldn't compete with the other things that I want to do, and that I could really help relieve the financial pressure by financially manifesting. And in that moment, it was 5 years after I divorced, I realized I am no longer married to my ex-husband, who would have really, really resented that. Like all at once, and within a month I was making a whole load of money, which helped see the children through the next 5 years. And it all came because I, rather than like leaving the projection with his ex-wife, there was a kind of withdrawal of the projection inside and a kind of openness of like inquiry. What is it in me that's not yet being expressed? What am I so annoyed about inside myself right now? This helpless female dependent that is expecting the man to support her and kind of makes him the prison guard who doesn't really let me work, otherwise he feels threatened. All of these structures, like probably half of them inherited, you know. And it began a whole beautiful process of like, from the root chakra of like, when I began making money, like a man with a briefcase, I would drive home to where we lived. It was like, I'm just like everybody else. I too earn money. I was total grown up now. This whole kind of, it doesn't sound very holy, but this was major for me. Because after that, because the root then opened, it was possible to move into beyond in the root, into the emptiness process, and to begin actually manifesting spiritually. So we don't get to dictate really the steps that need to be taken to come where the deeper destiny needs us to go. We can only take the next step according to what's most bothering and most asked from us in any individual moment. So, we've spoken yesterday about the pain of rejection and the fear of rejection and how this is a meta-fear. And what we're talking about in terms of attitude during these exercises is also about this habit of rejection. Because denial, repression, suppression is very much got that energy, it recruits that energy of rejection. And so much of where we have been split within ourselves, from our naturalness, from our wholeness, has been an effect of this scorching pain of rejection, where our mother's love was suddenly withdrawn, or we were suddenly blamed for something which we, in our naturalness, didn't know, or in our playfulness, suddenly it became bad, awful, naughty, and we were just being playful or curious. All of these places where we split from ourselves, where the psyche, the personality, and the personality is a living psychological form, an energetic form. These places where we split ourselves into 2, 3, 4, 5, and often have kind of inner fights going on between one side of ourselves and another as a result. So all of these splits are fueled with the energy of rejection. And that means that although we might not get the whole knife in the heart, the whole whack, it's kind of moving with a horribleness through all of our experience in some ways, and through all the chakras. So the reflex when we meet the energy of rejection is to reject. It's like in Israel they say the best defense is attack. You know, so if you feel a bit threatened, like kill them. You know? Reject before you are rejected. And you can see it when somebody comes into a room and they've got a big pain of rejection and they feel nobody likes them in the room. They'll put their head up and they won't look at anybody. They reject everybody in the room rather than feel the pain of being rejected by everybody in the room often. But that's not as bad as the splits we make from our own experience. And when we try to heal a problem out of existence because it's bad, because we judge it as being bad inside ourselves, then what we're doing in a way is feeding it with another infusion of that same energy of rejection. Because often what we're then doing is we're rejecting the rejected part of ourselves. Or we're forsaking the forsaken aspect of ourselves. We're abandoning the abandoned one inside us. We're neglecting the one that has been so badly neglected. And in this, a lot of what we see as what we suffer in our lives is made up of a constant infusion of our own denial. So the original thing is like maybe we wet the bed and mummy was angry with us, so we can get over that. But it became a constant topping up, a refueling of the pain of rejection, in this split of some naturalness of our instinctive side. So that we can't ever really trust females anymore, but it's constantly being topped up with our refusal to just let it be whatever it is. And often with our energetic blocks or our contractions, what we find is when we finally get to what the big deal is, it's not such a big deal anymore. 99% of it was our own rejection of it. And that's a little bit what they mean when they talk about redemption. It can be very complete, like suddenly you're free. Like it can be a gradual movement, or it can be a sudden movement. Like to be suddenly surprised that actually you're absolutely and totally free. And it's really okay to be here as you are. It can be like, oh. And then sometimes people laugh because it's so obvious. It's like, what was I on? What kind of trance have I been in? So that's a little bit about attitudes in working with the meditations. Attitudes of acceptance, softness, curiosity, and remembering how very big we are, how vast we are. How vast is our consciousness, how vast is our being. We have all the space and time for everything. And if we don't heal it now, it can wait 1,000 years. It doesn't matter.